We have two types of conditions, so suspensive conditions and resolutive conditions. And all this means is that certain consequences or implications with respect to the contract might actually be suspended or only come into place at a later stage. And this is the primary difference between a term, which basically says you must pay the money by a certain date, and a condition, which specifies that if something is not done by a certain date, some other event takes place. So for example, when a person buys property, one of the most popular suspensive conditions is the acquisition of funding or financing from a bank. So I will buy this property, but subject to the bank giving me money or affording me a loan in order for me to be able to afford the property. And if I cannot acquire that loan, then this agreement will lapse and I will not be bound by this agreement. And this is extremely important, especially with high value transactions where it's an exit. It's a way for somebody to go into a specific deal or a property transaction and be able to exit it if something happens that doesn't allow them to proceed. And remember, this isn't exclusive to property transactions. We do this in commercial transactions all the time. We even see it in lease agreements. But now one very popular question is, how do these conditions impact the tax consequences? And what are the tax consequences if these conditions exist in any sort of agreement? So again, if we go back into the property space, that's a very common where this problem commonly arises. If you look at transfer duty, for example, just because there's suspensive condition does not mean that transfer duty is not payable within the 6-month period. Now, why is this? It's because of the Transfer Duty Act and the specific wording. The Transfer Duty Act actually requires that the payment be made from the date of signature. So you could have a suspensive condition that applies 1 year down the line as an example, and the purchaser still hasn't taken transfer. That does not mean that you will be able to wait or defer the payment of transfer duty. Transfer duty must be paid within 6 months. But where we do find that suspensive conditions basically block a tax consequence or delay or defer a tax consequence, especially when it comes to capital gains tax. If a contract runs over a certain period of time and the purchase price is subjected to certain events, like, for example, calculations of profits or, some sort of revenue, which happens all the time, especially in commercial transactions. So where the purchase price is unknown, for an example, where the payment of the purchase price is not yet due until something were to happen. And we see this quite a lot, especially in business transactions, because a certain purchase price is agreed to, but subject to the business performing in a certain way, certain funds being available, certain operational expenditure being held back, and this purchase price being paid over a period of time. Happens in property transactions as well. But that capital gains is actually not deferred. It's as it comes every year of assessment. There's a certain gain, for example, on the amount actually received for that specific year. Because if the payments only accrue after a number of years, and we're not 100% sure what they're going to be, or if they're even going to accrue at that later stage, you look at each specific year and you do the calculation what the capital gain is. Now remember, I'm not speaking about installment sale agreements here. So if you defer the payment of the purchase price over a period of time, that does not have the implication where capital gains doesn't accrue. This is specifically when there's a condition that makes the payment of the purchase price subject to something else over a period of time, or the amount itself is not determinable. In that specific instance, you cannot pay capital gains because you don't know what the gain would be. So you can only pay the capital gain as and when you experience it throughout the contract period. We have